Welcome in. We're coming to you guys live on a Wednesday night as the Panthers wrapped up their first preseason game against the Patriots, and we got joint practices and the Jets coming to town tomorrow. Panthers also dropped their camp confidential. We'll be talking about that this evening as well. But first, Bryson, how we doing? What are you drinking tonight? Anything?
Doing great. Yeah, I'm drinking some good old fashioned homebrew from my wife's friend's husband. So shout out to Chris in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's like a cerveza. I don't know. It's pretty good, and nothing really hits like homebrew. I'm like one beer in, and feeling it. So it's very good.
Yeah, I got Ultra Water. You ever hear of it?
Oh yeah, some
Michelob
good
Ultra.
stuff.
I'm drinking that. This is from our little golf trip this past weekend. So
We're not going to talk
worked
about
out
that
well.
score either. We're
Yeah.
not talking about that golf score.
Hey, man, that was fun. We went to a championship course, Greensboro, Bryan Park. I golfed out of my mind. Bryson, not so
Not much.
much. It was still a good day though, a better day than at work. So we'll take it. But
Amen.
we got a lot on tap for you guys tonight, and we got a guest that we've had on several times on this show. It seems like it's been, as they say in the South, a hot minute. I feel like it's the draft, maybe sometime in the summer we talked to JJ Hardy, but it's been a while. Let's bring him in here. JJ, good to see you, man.
Good to see y'all, man.
All right, so we have a ton to talk about. I'll give Bryson the floor. He's got a question with you. I called you the outlaw when we came in here because there's been some sparring going on online. But Bryson, take it away.
Yeah, JJ. I got a question for you. No judgment from us. I can't promise anybody that's watching, but so there's been a lot of controversy online, and I feel like you have some opinions about Bryce Young. Either good or bad, and I just wanted to give you the floor for a little bit to talk about your opinions of Bryce Young this year and moving forward, and what are your expectations for him?
Wow, that's a way to get us started. But I'm glad you gave me an opportunity because I believe people are confused by my post on X. And, obviously, when you post something, tweet something, whatever you want to call it nowadays, a lot of context can be lost, right? And I know I have the ability to write how many characters I want to write, but I want to say what I want to say and dip out, for the most part, because oftentimes I'm working or I'm moving and I just have a thought, based on something that you all might have shared from training camp or some other report or whatever. But Bryce Young, I think I'm on the record for being somebody who believed Bryce Young could be a guy. We can go back, and since people like screenshotting my posts or tweets, you can search my name and Bryce Young, and I can guarantee you that 90% of what you will find will be positive, right? Going back to his days in Alabama, I thought Bryce Young was the best quarterback in college football for his 2 years that he started at Alabama. And I probably didn't even think anybody was even close until CJ Stroud played against Georgia that January of 2023. I believe Bryce Young is, I want to say believe. I know Bryce Young has been successful at every level he's played. He was the best quarterback in the nation. That's why he went to Alabama. He went to Alabama and, he waited a year, but when he got his shot in 1 year, he was a Heisman Trophy winner. He came back and followed up that campaign with another outstanding campaign without some of his receiving weapons. I think Bryce Young has been outstanding to this point in his career. When we went into the draft last year, I was back and forth about Bryce being number one or number two. The more I dug into tape and film and, researching what guys had to say about these guys in the draft process, I started Bryce Young, I felt like if he wasn't 1A, he was 1B, right? So let's just go ahead and just nip that part in the bud. Like Bryce Young wasn't a bad draft pick, right? Because I think most of the NFL would have drafted Bryce number 1 overall. I just personally lean CJ because we have Frank Wright. But again, this ain't about CJ. This is about me as a Carolina Panthers fan. But the draft is over. You know, the draft has been over for over what, 14 months now? So almost. So when I talk about Bryce Young now, I talk about Bryce Young as the Carolina Panthers quarterback, not the guy that we're comparing to C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson or Will Levis or any of his contemporaries. I'm worried about my team, our team, the Carolina Panthers, and wanting to know if we have a franchise quarterback. I think modern fandom has made us like hyper focused on the quarterback position. You know, in today's NFL, you know, and I think that's because of Twitter and, you know, being able to criticize and talk about these guys every day, the way the media sensationalizes that position. So if your team isn't successful, the media and all the focus is going to be on that one position. I love defense personally. You know, I would love to talk about defense all day, but I know that if we're going to win, we got to win through the quarterback position. Bryce Young happens to be the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers right now. And let's keep it real, though. Bryce Young was the first overall pick for the Carolina Panthers. We gave up a lot to get Bryce Young. We gave up a lot to get the pick, but we used that pick on Bryce Young. That being said, Bryce is in a position, and I kind of feel bad for him, but then again, I don't because he's a grown man playing football. But I feel bad for him because I know that he has a lot of burden to shoulder with trying to lead this team to being a successful franchise. And there's a whole lot of things wrong with the Carolina Panthers. It's not all on Bryce. It's not about him. But I know that if we're going to get to where we eventually want to be as a franchise, it's going to be through Bryce Young, right? It's not going to happen with him not being at least top half of the league. And so some of my frustrations have been in this offseason, and whether I'm right or wrong, I'm eager to see him play with the head coach that was hired to kind of help fix him, right? Let's keep it real. They felt like they needed to bring in a coach that had the right temperament, the right scheme to be able to work with the quarterback that Dave Tepper believes should be his franchise quarterback. So if we go back to January or February, whenever it was that we were in the head coaching search, you know, we were about to lose our mind trying to figure out who we were going to hire to be the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Nobody saw Dave Canales coming. I mean, the closer we got to it and people start leaking stuff, people start thinking about it. But heading into that search, I don't think Dave Canales was number 1, 2, or 3 or anybody's dream sheet, right, for the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. We picked Dave Canales to come in here and work with Bryce Young to see if he can do what he did with Baker Mayfield, to do what he did with Geno Smith, based on reports, to see if he can do that for our guy, right? We went out and traded early in the offseason for Deontay Johnson, a guy who could separate because that's what they said Bryce Young needed. We went into the draft. Well, even before the draft, we went into free agency and drafted 2 interior offensive linemen, a right guard, and Robert Hunt, a left guard, and Damian Lewis. We went into the draft. First pick of the draft for the Carolina Panthers was Xavier Legette. Came back and got a running back with Brooks, and then we picked up a pass-catching tight end in the 4th round with JT Sanders. That's a lot of emphasis on helping Bryce Young, right? And so now we got all these pieces together except for Brooks, and they're all in the house, right? Got the offensive lineman here. We got Deontay Johnson. We got Xavier Legette. And I know that some of these guys have been banged up in the summer. But if you see all these pieces and components of this plan to come together and fit this young man and make him the quarterback that everybody believed that he was just a year ago, like I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to see him operate the Carolina Panthers offense so he can look the part of our guy, right? So my frustration lies in the fact that I know that he's been out at training camp and he's had some success. You know, some of these days you guys have been out there, you've seen him, you know, in person, live. Last year I went to training camp and he was a rookie, you know, but I saw some cool things, but I didn't see anything that was like, man, like that's the guy, right? We didn't see it all last year, but all these things have been done this offseason to help him look like the guy. I haven't seen it yet. And so last week was our first opportunity to see him play against guys who were out to get him. And I know it's just a preseason, but I felt like Bryce isn't in the category of guys who can afford to sit yet, right? It doesn't matter what his draft status was last year. It doesn't matter that he won the Heisman. It doesn't matter that he was the top quarterback, you know, back in 2021 or whenever it was that he came out of high school. What matters is Bryce getting reps. Bryce actually getting real-time timing with receivers on the field, playing against guys that's trying to really hurt him, you know, hit him, I should say, try to intercept him. I mean, that's happening in that practice anyway. I just want Bryce to get real experience for this system with these guys. So when we go into week one, I can feel like, you know what, this guy's ready. I want to see Bryce succeed. I want Bryce Young to be the franchise quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, like without a doubt. I'm getting old. I don't have time to go through 50 million rebuilds, churning through number one overall quarterbacks. No, I don't want to see Carolina have to draft a quarterback anytime soon. Like, I want Bryce to be the guy. I think the disconnect between reality and what Twitter wants Bryce Young to be, I think they're two different things, though. And I think we don't talk enough about that. Bryce has limitations, right? You know, and they're not like limitations that make him unable to play football, but we seen the guy, I forget his name, I'm sorry. I can't think of his name, but the guy wrote an article last week talking about Bryce Young. You know, what was wrong with the Panthers and what is wrong with Bryce Young and what he had problems with, right? And I'm sorry, I know it was his first article with ESPN. I just can't think of his name. But I read that. I saw that in real time. We all saw that. But some people choose to pretend that what we saw that was bad from Bryce was always somebody else's fault. And the reality was, it wasn't always somebody else's fault. Some things he had to get better at. But that's every one of us. You know, like whatever your job is, my job, I'm not the best at my job. I think I am sometimes, but in the reality, I'm not. Like, I mess up sometimes. Sometimes I don't have the right answer. Sometimes I should have researched a little bit more before I responded, right? When it comes to Bryce Young, he was a rookie. You know, we have to give him time. But in today's league, there just won't be a whole lot of time. So we need to start seeing that development, that growth, the things that we want to see Bryce get better at. It's time to start seeing that, because if we don't see it, it's not about what JJ Hardy thinks or what Curtis or what Bryson thinks or what anybody on Twitter posts or screenshots or whatever. They're going to move on, right? So I don't want the young man to fail. I'm just going to put positivity on it. I want him to succeed. I want him to be successful. I want him to be the franchise quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. But we need to see it. And yes, we're going to see it, you know, in about 4 weeks. You know, it's going to be official. But unless he starts putting in that real work, you know, getting the real reps, I'm just fearful that we won't be pleased at what we see early on and where he's at mentally. I don't know if you guys remember this, but people were concerned about what happened to Bryce last year having long-term effects on his career, right? You know, the lack of protection. The lack of fundamentals and footwork and things that we start seeing in real time and things that showed up on tape after he had like such a bad start. I don't want to put another bad year on Bryce because I don't know if mentally, although we know that he's off the charts when it comes to his mental abilities and he has a father who has a background in psychology. He's been trained right. He's super calm. They even said that today about how it's so hard to get his heart rate up or whatever. I love that about him. I think there's going to come a time where that's going to be really beneficial for us with him being the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. But I'm ready to see the growth. And I think anybody who's being real with themselves and what they've seen so far and what's being reported sometimes, I think you have to say, okay, I think we need to see that. And that's where I'm at. I'm too old to be, I fanboy some in my life. But when it comes to Bryce, I just got to keep it real. But I've supported every quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. Bryce would be no different. But when those quarterbacks look bad, we talked about it. I don't like the fact that some of the fandom is so protective of Bryce Young that you can't even mention him with any kind of criticism without it being met with you're a hater or you just want a CJ Stroud or this or that. Like, stop it, man. This ain't about them anymore. This is about him. This is about him being our quarterback. And for me personally, my desire to see him take the steps forward. So I'll just leave it at that. I can say so much more, but I don't want to take up all your time with that question. That was a crazy question, by the way. But I
coming out swinging.
Well, yeah, and thank you for that answer, JJ, because I think it's important. We've known you for a while, and I know you're not a quote unquote hater, right? You keep it real, and I know you just as bad as Curtis and I want to see Bryce Young succeed. But I think on Twitter it might come off as that, and that's not the case. And I think we're all in the same boat that we hope to see growth this year, right? And some people put it more blatantly than others, but if we don't see growth this year, then it's natural. There's going to start being questions, especially with all the additions like you've mentioned that they've added this offseason. We have to see that growth, and I think Chris and I can both agree on that. But I think where we might differ a little bit is last season, Curtis and I really don't put a lot of blame on Bryce for what happened and what went down when you take into consideration the coaching staff, lack of weapons, the offensive line, everything kind of crumbling from underneath him, really, which there was blame for Bryce, obviously. There were plays where Mito gets open on a fade and Bryce throws him or whatever it was, whatever the case was in those situations. But I think altogether, I think we all agree, we do have to see that growth this year. And again, I appreciate you for kind of clearing on that one.
Well, yeah, and I think sometimes too, I think you can read a message one way on Twitter and you put it out there and then someone takes it a whole different way. And that's just the beast of online and the Twitter platform itself. But I do agree. I mean, I remember, I know the guy who you're talking about. I was on mute when you were talking before. I think I posted a lot of his stuff from that article on ESPN Plus. Brandon Slowick, maybe his name is. I don't remember. Brandon something. Yeah. And I intentionally shared several screenshots from that post because I agree I feel like people misconstrue. You can take one little snippet out of there and it looks like they're all blaming, the offense line. But when you really break it down, I think I screenshotted like 3 or 4 posts. They talked about the offensive line. They talked about the wide receivers. They talked about Bryce Young's footwork and guys getting open and having separation and, Bryce not finding them. So I think I agree with you. I think you need to look at it across the board. There's blame to go around. I also think a lot of Panther fans get antsy because this was a very, I don't know, the media wants to say across the board, everyone thought Bryce Young was the number one guy, but there was a lot of hate at this team from opposing fans. Like, oh, you got the short guy, you got so I feel like sometimes people are they're in a defense mode about Bryce because there has been so much hate outside of this organization from opposing fans that when they do see something negative about him, they're going to jump down their throat. So, I mean, I get both sides. I see it all. But yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the Panthers tried to improve those areas that they lacked last year around Bryce. So he has less and less excuse this year where he has to show up and actually perform because they put talent around him and they invested a lot in this offensive line. So we'll see what happens. But I do want to talk about this preseason game because you kind of alluded to it, and we'll talk about the decision too because you mentioned that as well. But Panthers-Patriots preseason game, what were your guys' initial thoughts? Bryson, I'll start with you, and then we can kind of bounce around. What did you see in this game? What did you like? What did you not like from the Canales-led Panthers team?
Yeah, let me start with the quarterback position. And when I say this, I don't mean this as a joke, but I don't think Jack Plummer could start for JJ's son's football team in high school. That was one of the worst quarterback performances I've seen in a long time, and I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. So I think starting with that, that really sucked because we didn't get to see the wide receivers that we're hoping to see the improvement from that room and them get the opportunities that we were hoping for in that game because Plummer was so bad. When he had time, he wouldn't throw the ball. He would get sacked. When he got the ball out, it was accurate. And then the two passes that were actually accurate and on the money were dropped. So I think that was the most frustrating part for me. I think all the scheme, the offensive scheme, what Canales showed in that preseason game was a little promising in my opinion, in my eyes. It seemed like it was a little bit more creative, which is a very low bar coming from last season with Frank Reich and that vanilla offense. We all know that. So the scheme was a little bit more promising than what we saw last year. Defense, I thought, played well, especially when the top some starters and then the top second stringers were in. I thought that they played really well, especially Iku Leota. A couple other defensive linemen, I thought they stood out. But yeah, I think it was just the first preseason game, and you know where I stand on Bryce not getting playing time. I was personally fine with that, based off of what we saw from that offensive line in training camp, and then also some in the preseason game as well. So I think the major takeaway for me was just the horrid. I don't know how he's still on the team because we've seen it all throughout training camp every time we've been there, and then everybody saw it in the preseason game. Jack Plummer, he was putrid at quarterback. So I think that's my major takeaway from the preseason game.
Yeah, I just want to just mention, folks, we have a comment section. Comment, whether you're on YouTube, Twitter, we see the comments. We like to interact with you guys, so don't be afraid to do that. I see Bland's already in there. I appreciate him coming in here and just showing some interaction. But yeah, on the preseason game, I warned Bryson, we've been to a practice together, so you kind of knew, but I warned you guys last week when we had Keep Purring on the podcast, and Jack Plummer's awful. Like, we saw him in training camp. The guy was airmailing balls to coaches when they're doing the QB warm-ups, like early on in practice. And he's the same guy in the ACC championship game versus FSU. I went to that game at Bank of America Stadium last year. I didn't remember the guy, but I was like, I recognize this name. So I went back, looked it up, and it was the guy playing at Louisville, and he had like 100-some yards and 30 pass attempts in an entire game. He was terrible. That whole game, if you watched the ACC, it was defense all day and bad QB play. So the guy sucked. I wasn't shocked by it. I'm disappointed, like you said, Bryson, because I feel like, some of these wide receivers we'd like to see who, the Cokers of the world, the TMJ, can he bounce back? The guy who demanded a trade last year, Mingo, how has he progressed? And, we didn't see a whole lot because he didn't hit a lot. But when he did, it was disappointing because, we saw, glimpses of TMJ in training camp. We saw the Mingo making progress from this past season in training camp. And then when the lights came on during the game, both those guys dropped the ball. And I think that was the most disappointing thing, was to see Mingo drop it, because Mingo has really he looks different than he did last year. Like, he's getting open, making plays at training camp that he didn't make this past season. And then when he got one right between the numbers, he dropped it. So that sucked. That annoyed the hell out of me. But I agree with you, Bryson, on the play calls. I thought there was a good mix. There was a couple bunch sets that you saw, some motion. Obviously, they're not going to put everything out on the kitchen table in this game. To use the Frank Reich quote term, vanilla offense. But yeah, I definitely liked from some of the formations that I saw, and they're going to pound the rock. And I really thought Boone had a good game. I thought he had some promising runs. And then on defense, guys like Iku Leota had a hell of a game. I mean, the guy just showed out and played really well. He was all over the field. I thought Boodle had some nice plays in there. He's an aggressive corner, and I'm sure we'll talk about him more. But I thought, he's kind of he's going to go and you take a risk. So you're gonna see a big play once in a while. But I feel like he had some good coverage out there. And then I thought I think it was Jameson. That's the guy from Texas, right? The corner from Texas. Yep. He's got some return game to him. He had a good return. I think it was on kickoff at one point, or maybe in the punt game. I can't remember, but he had a pretty nice return at one point. And then just bouncing back to offense, I thought Jordan Matthews looked really good. That was clearly Plummer's security blanket that entire game, and I think he's got a real good shot to make this team as probably tight end 4, I would think. I was hoping Sanders would make some more plays, Jatavion Sanders, with some of these guys down with injury, but just didn't see a whole lot of that. Thought the offensive line at times were all right, and then there was other times where the Patriots were getting pressure. So again, offensively, you'd like to see a well-oiled machine, and that we're still not getting that, but we also didn't have the number 1 offense out there, so it's hard to say. But JJ, anything you saw from that preseason game that you liked? Any guys?
I hate, because I've been so negative on the timeline. At least that's what's been suggested about me lately, to say something negative here, but I wasn't inspired. I will say that. I'll tell you why I like watching the preseason. First of all, I like seeing my ones go and get a little reps. Some reps. We didn't get that. We knew we weren't getting that. So I think what I want to see, if I can't see my ones, is like all the guys that's like competing for positions. Like watching what that hunger looks like, right? Watching guys that you didn't see coming, maybe at running back or wide receiver or corner or linebacker. It's just flashing as like, oh my God, like I didn't know that guy was like that. I think I'm tired of the Panthers not having guys like that, right? Like this era of Carolina Panthers football, not having those type of guys show up in the preseason. Like, I think the last preseason guy that I got excited about was like Jordan Scarlett, like back in 2019. But we don't have like even Mike Boone. I thought Mike Boone had a great game, but Mike Boone has been around for a while. And let's be real, like if Brooks is healthy, if Sanders stays on the team, and if Chuba Hubbard is RB1 entering the season, Mike Boone won't have a place on this roster. So him looking good in a preseason game for the Carolina Panthers, like, what does that really mean for us? I mean, I don't really see his future on this team. Maybe I'm shocked, but that's not all that great for me. I like ISM. I would have to admit that I wasn't sure if ISM would be a guy that would return from last year, but obviously they gave him a new contract in the offseason. And I believe ISM is like one of those guys. I think he's the dog. Like, I think he's one of those guys in that receiving room is probably working harder than everybody else out there. I think whoever ISM is, I think we're getting 100% of ISM. Like, I think he's giving us everything. And I think he's doing whatever it takes so he can have a place on this team and in this league. And I appreciate seeing the effort from ISM. So I think he flashed, but it was primarily because they had to use him so much, right? Like, he was on punt return. He was like the main receiver, for the most part, especially after they took Mingo and TMJ out of the game. So I like ISM. Like you said, Leota, he flashed. Everybody saw that. He flashed on last training camp too before getting hurt. So that wasn't all that surprising to me. I was a little disappointed. Like I wanted Trevor Wallace to be a little bit more reckless. Like people didn't talk about that enough for me, but like I'm watching defense, honestly. Whenever I watch football, I'm watching defense more than I'm watching offense. And I was sitting there looking at Trevor Wallace like, go do something like disruptive, like go make a play, go hit somebody. And he played very hesitant. Like the guy they had lined up beside him played way more free. And I can't remember who that was, but he had a better game at linebacker than me. I mean, Trevin, he recovered on that deep play that Jameson gave up when he took that risk and the receiver caught the ball and he had to kind of run him down. I love the effort on the chase down, but I wanted to go see him go and smash something. And maybe I see that this next game, but I was disappointed that I didn't see that. I think Jamie Robinson, I don't know.
I don't think he makes a team. I don't.
I don't think he should, but I know he's popular with some fans. I mean, I like this rap video when he got drafted last year, but I haven't seen him do anything since then. And every time I see him, he's like missing the tackle or something like that. He did have like a decent hit, in preseason, I think, in that game. I think he had a decent hit or two. But I just don't see what his role is. I mean, I don't think you can like put him out there at safety and leave him out there.
Well, and that room is deep. I mean,
yeah. I don't see where you would have him like on the roster. And honestly, I'm just tired of like these guys being on the Carolina Panthers roster who wouldn't be on any other roster. Like we waived like 3 guys or something like that. Nobody claimed them. Like that's the kind of stuff I'm tired of. And I think there was a lot of guys who played last Thursday who, unfortunately, they probably don't belong in the NFL. I hate to say that, but it's real. And so I hope that we tried to use the waiver wire to pick up Caden Stearns. I'm sorry. We tried to pick up Caden Stearns. He was too hurt, to join the team. I hope Dan Morgan continues to use that priority in the waivers as these weeks go along so we can help build up this roster because, honestly, I'm just not impressed with the talent that was on display Thursday night. Now, all the starters were out for the most part, so I just took it like, man, that was just a wasted game. I mean, you might as well put us in the Hall of Fame game.
Let's talk about the decision not to play Bryce a little bit because you touched on it, and I kind of wanted to just have a discussion because I'm of the mindset let Dave Canales set the parameters. He's the coach. I feel like some of us almost are playing like the David Teppers of the world, and like David wants to see Bryce out there, but Dave's the coach. Let this guy make the decisions. You brought him in to hire him. Let's see what this guy does. With his, the offensive quote unquote guru or the guy who saves quarterbacks. But I agree with you in a sense that I think Bryce needs reps within this new offense with Austin Corbett, the new center, with some of these new wide receivers. But I'm not too panicky about the first game, and I get it. And I think a lot of it plays into, there was a lot of QBs, veteran QBs that played week 1 preseason. I can't remember a time where that's always happened. If you look back these last couple years. So this year just seemed like Bryce wasn't playing. Then you see Patrick Mahomes out there. You see CJ Stroud out there. You see Jordan Love out there. You see all the rookies out there. And you're like, what the hell? Carolina's the worst team in the league, and they're not bringing out their squad. But my question is, are you going to feel a little bit less about that if, some of those starters don't play this week and then Bryce comes out and plays on, Saturday or whatever it is and then plays the next week in Buffalo? Like, I think we need reps. I think Bryce needs reps in the preseason just to get his feet a little wet with this new offense. But I don't want to panic too much about just the first week. But I see where everyone is coming from, if that makes sense at all.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, fire away.
We have the Jets tomorrow, right? For the next 3 days. So if Bryce goes out there and gets reps against the Jets, do you think they're going to let him play the next preseason game?
I don't know. I've asked a couple people, and they've told me that Bryce might not play this week, and he plays against Buffalo. And I've heard that. Like, coaches put a lot of value in these joint practices. So you look at it and say, yeah, Bryce plays hard these next 3 days, and then they say, no, it's not worth it. Let's bring him out against Buffalo. But I think people need to pump the brakes a little bit, because there are teams that put no stock Sean McVay in preseason with their starters. Sean McVay usually doesn't play his starters in preseason, and Canales has talked about that. And I don't remember who did the interview of the younger coaches have a mindset of not playing their starters, and where does he fall in that? I think it was actually today that he was asked that.
It was.
And he said, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I think there's value in playing your starters, but I also think he was kind of in between on it. So I'm on your side of that. I do think he needs reps in preseason, but I'm not going to freak out because he didn't get reps this past week, because I do think that game was sloppy as hell. His line wasn't fully healthy. And I get that that's going to happen during the season. I totally understand that. But why not put him out there when all of his guys are ready to roll, put out a good, 1 or 2 series, pull him out of there, build some confidence, and let's get into the season that way.
You know what seems like it's super weak sauce to me? And I won't even, we're moving on from last week. Let's focus on this week. We have the most expensive offensive line in football. And right now, today, all 5 are healthy. All right? God willing, they stay healthy for the next 3 days. And we hit preseason game number 2. You got the most expensive offensive line in football, and you're afraid to go out there and run 1 or 2 series in the preseason with those guys that you invested so heavily in. Like, I want to see, like you said, probably the most important reason to go out there and play during the regular season during the preseason is so Bryce and Austin Corbett can get used to having those exchanges. Bryce is going to be under center a lot this year, based on what I've seen, from everybody. I call it PSPN, you content creators, sharing good footage. But Bryce is under center, so that, center quarterback exchange is going to be crucial. He's in the shotgun. Can Corbett, can he be consistent with his snaps, back in the shotgun? Bryce is 5'10", so a high snap, can get over Cam Newton's head at 6'5". Like a high snap, for Bryce Young, that's not that high. And I'm not even cracking jokes. I'm just being real. Like,
Corbett don't have a problem with high. He's got a problem with low.
He's keeping them low. Okay, so
yeah.
Even still, what I'm saying? Bryce ain't a shortstop. So you still got to be able to handle those snaps. And he's struggling with, against guys at our practices. Like, wait until you face Quentin Williams this week, right? And then that's going to be practice. But give them opportunity when the defensive line can actually get to the quarterback. I mean, obviously.
And we're going to talk about the Jets. I don't want to jump the gun because I want to kind of talk about some of the things that happened at post preseason, but we'll get to the Jets because I agree with you. We'll get to the Jets. I just want to throw this out there in the chat. Appreciate you guys. This was from Buck NFL 55. It's a valid point. Like, he wants to see. I mean, I get it. I get the gripe. I'm of the mindset. Bryson, I know. I mean, what's your take on the not playing Bryce week 1 in preseason?
Yeah, I didn't mind it at all whatsoever. I think that there's obvious signs of worry Well, maybe not worried, but there's signs that the offensive line still needs to gel. You have a lot of new and moving parts on that offensive line, and they're clearly not working together as a cohesive unit yet. And we see that, at camp when we go. So I think they just weren't willing. They weighed the risk. Is 1 to 2 drives with Bryce Young in a preseason week 1 game worth it behind an offensive and still figuring it out? And I just, they came away no, obviously, and I agree with that. And I said last week that if Bryce didn't play a snap in the preseason, it wouldn't bother me. It really wouldn't. I do agree wholeheartedly that he needs reps, and I think that they have a lot of stock into the joint practices, which Canales was asked about it today, like you said, Curtis, and he said he's kind of half and half, like right in the middle, the joint practices and preseason games. But I think you still are getting those live reps. He's not at risk of being hit in a joint practice, but still have the wide receivers going against the corners of the other team. And, Bryce still has to get the ball out and wide receivers still have to get open. So those reps are important, and the offensive line is still going to be blocking, even though the defensive line can't hit. I mean, they still have to give Bryce time and simulate a real game. So I think I would like to see Bryce in the preseason. I don't want that misconstrued. I think at some point I would like to see him. If it's not this week, then definitely next week. But I think if they decide not to play him, I'm fine with that, because I don't want J.J. McCarthy happening in Carolina, and then we're looking at Andy Dalton if he's healthy, or Jack Plummer playing week 1 in Carolina. God forbid we're going to have the number 1 pick again, and I'm good. Let him get reps when it matters, when it counts, and that's in the regular season. If that is what it costs to maybe lose a couple games for him to get comfortable, I think that's where I land more than him being out there behind an offensive line that's still trying to figure it out and risking getting injured when it doesn't count. So I think the offensive line starters should have been out there. I don't think there was any question as to why they weren't out there. They should have absolutely been out there, because I've just been the whole time that they look like they don't know what they're doing half the time. And, they weren't out. I don't believe any of the starters in the offensive line in week 1. So they better be out there week 2. They need the reps as much, or if not more, than anyone to get that cohesiveness going. So I'm fine with whatever they decide. Like you said, Curtis, I trust Dave Canales. We don't really have a choice in whatever decision he makes. And if I had to guess, I would say he plays on Saturday. Just like vibes-wise off of the press conference today from Dave Canales, I think Bryce is going to get at least a drive or 2 in Saturday, and then probably another couple drives on the following week versus the Bills. But if he doesn't, I'm cool. I'm cool either way.
Yeah, if I'm betting, man, I honestly don't think he plays Saturday. I think he's going to play against Buffalo. They're going to put a lot of stock in this joint practices. And like Jay just said, as we keep mentioning this Jets game, but I mean, there's a stout defensive line on the other side. I think they might hold off and put him out there against Buffalo, but we'll see. Let's talk about some of the guys they cut, because I know Bryson, one of these guys, was he was one of your dark horses to make the 53. So Devin Tompkins, speedy short dude, off the roster. They waived him. The kicking competition, obviously, it sounds like has been settled up to this point. We'll see. Harrison Mevis was cut. And then Willie Drew and Jaden Sheridan. Again, kind of what JJ said. I feel like that running back room is fairly deep with the guy they drafted when he comes back, Brooks. It's just, I don't know how. I mean, Jaden Sheridan, would he have made it on, a couple of years ago? Maybe, when this team didn't have any backs. But with where they're at with Hubbard and, Sanders, Blackshear probably doesn't have too much of a big role besides returning. It seems like he doesn't get a lot of looks in practice on offense. And then once Brooks comes back in the fold. But Bryson, shocked at all by Tompkins? Not,
yes.
I guess this early as a cut.
Yeah, well, I believe it was an injured waived cut. So I think he got injured in the preseason game week 1, and apparently it was pretty bad, and he was waived. So Yeah, I mean, last week I told everybody this is going to be someone that makes the 53-man roster because, we both saw it. His speed was completely different from everybody else out there on the practice field, on offense and defense. Devin Thomas, he was just different, and I thought that he brought an aspect to the wide receiver room that they really don't have besides maybe Deontay Johnson and speed wise. But I think Tompkins was even a level above Johnson, just strictly speaking speed. So I was sad to see it. I don't know the severity of the injury, but I would think that it was bad for them to move on this early because this is a player that spent with Canales last year in Tampa, and they brought him in through some controversy over the offseason that he had, and he was getting some reps in practice and looking really, really good. So I would speculate that the injury was probably more severe than we know, and that's why they moved on so early from him. But man, I hated to see him go because I had high hopes for him on this team.
We have some breaking news, and no, it's not the guy from San Francisco, so you guys can settle it down. But yeah, the Giants are trading for Jordan Phillips from the Cowboys. He was a defensive tackle. So that just dropped. But JJ, thoughts on these cuts? I don't know what you thought of Tompkins. I don't think you've been to any of the practices, and I can't remember how much he played in that preseason game. And then Mevis, I feel like you were one, pulling for Harrison and just his big leg. And hopefully, I kind of wanted to tweet this out, but I didn't. Hopefully, he doesn't turn out like the other Harrison, Butker in Kansas City, and is on his way to the Hall of Fame the way he kicks. So hopefully he's not another Harrison Butker and some team scoops him up. But it looks like he cleared waivers. But just your thoughts on some of these cuts they did recently.
I mean, it may have been Bryce, just sharing so much about Devin Tompkins that got me intrigued by him. But it was either you or somebody else who was high on Devin Tompkins, that made me go out and look, to see what he had done prior to Tampa and then prior to Carolina. And so I got excited about him. I think I asked a question last week, about, who would be the wide receiver room, and Devin Tompkins, was that guy I was hoping, would be that sixth receiver. So it's unfortunate that whatever happened to him. I know he did come in with that controversy, so I was a little leery on that anyway. But turns out that he didn't make the team. So I was disappointed to see that happen. Because what you said, Bryce, is something that that's what I want to see out of the preseason, is somebody who could you go to a training camp practice or you see a preseason game and you see a guy like this that looks a little different from everyone, right? Yeah. And so it sounded like Devin Tompkins could be that guy for us this year. So, yeah, I'm disappointed with that one. Harrison Mevis, like you said, I really didn't get into the thicker kicker stuff. I just don't want to continue to get to the 37, 36, 35-yard line and can't attempt the field goal. And so that's
you're also a guy who went to that Atlanta game. If I went to that Atlanta game, I don't know if I'd like Eddie Pinheiro anymore either. If I was physically at that game, I would have probably lost my shit. I would there's no doubt about it.
I won't go through the pain that I felt that day again, but I was sitting on the 5-yard line. So I was like, looking at them line up to kick that field goal, almost straight down the line. And I remember turning around and just talking so much trash to the fans behind me, all the Atlanta fans. I was sitting with the Atlanta fans. I thought the field goal was made, bro, because I couldn't see the uprights. I was right beside them, so I thought it cleared them. And I talked so much trash, and I could see the dead look on the face of the girl behind me when she realized that we had missed, and she pointed. She's like, "Y'all missed." And I turned around and disbelieved, me and my son. And I looked at him. He looked at me, because neither one of us have witnessed the Panthers win in person, right? We're 0-8 right now. And so we thought we had finally got it. And to see him miss that one, Man, they crushed me so bad, bro. Like I just, and this was like after the PAT miss. This was the overtime miss, and I was like, I can't believe this. And so yeah, I have PTSD, Pinheiro traumatic stress disorder, and I had it, and every time I see him go kick, like he can't kick enough balls to make me forget that day in Atlanta, and I want, but besides that, I think it's like the Carolina thing, right? Like why are we stuck with Eddie Pinheiro? We only ended up with Eddie Pinheiro because the kicker we had got hurt in the preseason in Charlotte. If I remember correctly, he was warming up on the sideline and like messed up his quad or something. So we had to go find Eddie Pinheiro off the couch, if I recall.
Yeah, who was that guy? Who was
Zane Gonzalez?
Gonzalez,
Zane,
that's right.
Yeah, Zane Gonzalez. That's we were going into year 2, I think.
Well, and Zane's the one who got one who got injured in preseason. I think it was the Buffalo preseason game.
Yeah, that's what I'm. And that was our guy that we had found after we moved on from Joey Slott, right? So we finally had Zane Gonzalez. He was dependable. He gets hurt in good Carolina way in the preseason, warming up in the net. And so now we have to find a field goal kicker, and it's Eddie P, right? Eddie Pinheiro comes in the 2022 crazy season all around. Baker Mayfield, trade Christian McCaffrey, Steve Wilkes comes in, Eddie Pinheiro with the stupid missed PAT and kick in Atlanta. Like so much wackiness. It was so easy to just move on from Eddie Pinheiro, right? But we didn't. And so, like, why are we, the Carolina Panthers, like the only type of team that gets caught up where you get basically like bullied by Eddie Pinheiro to have to keep him as your field goal kicker? Like, bro, like this is 2024. Like, you can't make one from 55. You can't make one from 52. Like, we can't even bring you on the field to like win the game if we make it to the 35-yard line, with the game on the line. Like, we can't even put you out there. Why don't we have a better option than Eddie Pinheiro? I know he's consistent, from 40 and in or whatever you want to call it, like high field goal percentage for the close ones. But this isn't a league where you win games with close field goals. Like sometimes if Bryce Young or whoever the quarterback is can get you there to the 40, to the 38, to the 37, to the 36, like the quarterback has done his job. Like Patrick Mahomes has led a lot of drives down to like the 33-yard line, and they can bring in Harrison Butker or, you can name the guy. Same thing with, all the other top quarterbacks. A lot of times they can just get into the scoring position, 35, and they can call the guy, he can make a 52 and walk off. We don't even have that. So of all the other things that's like heating up against Bryson, you're right. That's like one of those little subtle things that if he ever gets the opportunity to come, to drive us down the field, to either tie the game or win the game, he can't just get to the 33. He got to get to the 25. He got to get to the 20 to 21. He has to get to a really comfortable range in order for Eddie P to come in and close it out. Like, it's so, I don't know, man. Like, it's just frustrating. And I mean, if Eddie P is our kicker, then I wish him the best. But I just felt like this was a great opportunity to come in and give somebody else a shot. Like, what do we have to lose? You know what I'm saying? Like, because Eddie P definitely hasn't won anything for us. What's the game that Eddie P won for us? Like, can y'all remember one? I mean, was it?
He won 2 last year, actually.
Was it the Texans game?
He won the last. Yeah. No, 2 games last year he had game-winning field goals, but they were short. I mean, one was I think 20-some, and then one was like 30.
They were gimmies, man. Like, come on, man. Like, that's his job.
To his defense, though, and I bring this up a lot because I know everyone's like the 35 and in, and Frank decided not to kick it. If we're gonna trash Frank for the poor decisions he made last year, I'm gonna trash him too when. I want to say after that game, Chris Tabor was asked, do they think Eddie could have kicked at I think it was the 37, and he said he thought he had the leg to do it. So if we're going to trash Frank for poor decisions on offense and with Bryce Young and the play calls, we also got to trash him too when I think Eddie could at least went out there and attempted that, and Frank was the one who decided not to do it. So to his defense, I'm going to back him up a little bit there, because if you're going to say something bad about Frank here, you got to call it across the board too. It's the same criticism we have with Jonathan Mingo. If you're going to say Bryce Young should get a second chance, well, Jonathan Mingo should too, because he was on a piss poor play calling offense last year that didn't suit the players well. So just for his defense a little bit, but I get it. I understand it. I feel like Carolina maybe pulled the plug too early on the kick. Like, I get it. We were at the practice Sunday, Bryson and I, and Mevis did miss 2 kicks. I don't know what distance they were, but he was 3 for 5. One went off the crossbar. The other one went right. And that the next day he was cut. So I would have liked to seen him in a preseason game, because I don't even know if he kicked in that. I don't know who scored the field. Was he the one who kicked the field goal?
I think it was him. Yeah.
So I would have liked to see more preseason reps, because that's where I feel like that's where you actually get to see a little bit more from these guys, and not in training camp when you actually have fans in the stadium and a little bit more pressure and eyes on you. So that was kind of disappointing. I would have let him go another, at least I would have went through the last couple of preseason games, because I remember Canales has said this at one point, that I think he said, and he's learned this from Pete Carroll, you don't make the decision until you have to. And they still have time to make that kicker decision. You could have made that after the Buffalo game. So I mean,
and guess who? We'll and guess who missed? And guess who missed 2 kicks today in practice?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Eddie Pinheiro.
Man, get out of here. I mean, that's the kind of stuff, man, that made me so mad. It's like, what was the motivation to get rid of Mevis, whatever his name is, so quickly, when you had so much more time to figure that out? Like, to me, it was like,
I wonder if it was too, though, with reps for getting those guys game reps for the new kickoff rules, because that is it's a whole different ball game now. And those guys have kicked one way for so long on those kickoffs, and not getting those reps in an actual game, that might have, I wonder if that played into it at all, because I don't know who did kickoffs in the Patriots preseason game. I don't know if I think it was Mevis played this entire last game, didn't he? He got all the kicks. I don't even know if Eddie was out there.
I don't think so.
I think so.
So maybe they're like, okay, he had a bad day at practice this past week. He's missed a couple, and he has missed a couple the past couple of weeks and days in practice prior to even when we were there on Sunday. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we've spent enough time talking about kickers, but you come back to this, and again, I get flashbacks, and I did like Eddie. I also liked Mevis's leg. I thought he had a massive leg, and there's value to that too. But they pulled the plug early, and they're going to go with it, and we'll see if we're talking about it week 8 when Eddie misses a 40-yard field goal and the Panthers lose, and we're sitting here bitching about it. But
Harrison Mevis is going to the Pro Bowl.
But no one – the thing I was kind of shocked is no one claimed Mevis, and I thought they would have, because this guy, like, he kicked a 60-yarder in college. Like, he's got a leg. I'm shocked no one else brought him in. And maybe an injury or someone misses a couple in preseason and they bring him in. But
yeah, I think it's because every other team is probably they probably have an active kicking competition going on. So just adding a kicker to a team that already has 2 kickers. It just probably wasn't enough interested teams out there that had a need. So that's
and Buck brought up a good point. He said, maybe they needed the roster spot because there is guys down right now that are injured. So that could be a possibility. But I want to talk about practice because I kind of teased this, and we'll talk about this real quick, or I'll talk about this real quick, and then we'll go to break. I appreciate Bryson capturing this moment this past week at the the training camp practice we went to. If you guys just give me one damn second here, see if I can find this. So That's me and Bryce Young's dad. So they go to practices. They go to every one. His parents watch every single practice. And I had to go talk to him. So I sat down there. Guy is very genuine, nice dude, down to earth. Mr. Young, hi. And he offered me to sit right next to him. We talked for a good 5 minutes or so just about stuff. And I'm not going to get everything we talked about, but I did want to mention if you guys remember last year, I had tweeted something out in the offseason from our Panthers on Tap account about which wide receiver you'd like for this wide receiver room. And I think I put like Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo, and then I put a rookie wide receiver for 4 options. So it was like Leggett, Adonai Mitchell, Keon Coleman. And Bryce Young's dad replied, if you guys remember, and he said he liked Leggett. So I brought that up to him on Sunday, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I do remember that." And just brief conversation, but he told me he did get in trouble with his son. His son was not happy that he posted it, but he said that he got some reprieve, and he got cut loose a little bit because Leggett came out and spilled the beans and said that Canales told him if he's there at 33, they're taking him. So he got, the reins were taken off of him after that, but he did say he got in trouble initially with Bryce when he had posted that. And I thought I'd share that with you guys because I thought it was funny, but we had a great conversation. Again, I'll keep the rest in house. It was a good talk, but just thought I'd share that update with you guys because I thought it was cool. And again, both his parents, very down to earth people. And I'm glad, their son's on our team, and I hope he bounces back this year. And that's kind of what I told him. I really do hope, and I think we're all pulling for Bryce Young to show out this season. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back in 30 seconds, and then we'll keep the conversation going. Exciting news, Panther fans. I'm thrilled to announce our partnership with BetStamp and Sign Up Expert, opening up an incredible opportunity for you to join sportsbooks in your area to get the best odds and new user offers. Head over to our dedicated page at signupexpert.com/Panthers to explore a selection of sportsbooks tailored to your region, each with unique offerings. If you're ready to take sports betting to the next level and show some love to Panthers on Tap, I highly recommend signing up for your next sportsbook through our Sign Up Expert link. All right, guys, so let's talk kind of stuff that happened today, just with practice. And I feel like the bigger news out of it all is Deontay Johnson is out with a mild growing strain, is what they're calling it. Also, Dane Jackson was taken off on a cart. Canales said it was a hamstring tightness. Concerns at all with this? I know I went kind of panic mode last week with Leggett and his injury, and it sounds like he practiced today. I'm hoping they're not rushing that back. I feel like they need to pump the brakes. That guy, he's going to go full balls to the wall, which I appreciate. I mean, we saw what he did after minicamp. I mean, he was with Deebo Samuel running 20 miles an hour on a treadmill. So I do hope, he is fully healthy when he does come back. But I would like to see him out there, again, some tough Jets competition, in their corners, and they got some really good ones. But just your guys' thoughts on all the injuries. I tweeted something out today with free agency, and I think 3 or 4 of the guys that Dan Morgan signed the offseason has been hurt so far this camp. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were all talking about, is the depth on this team is awful. I mean, there's none. There is no depth on this roster, which is concerning, maybe probably outside of the safety room. Yeah, it's thin. So just thoughts, Bryson, what are you worried at all with the Deontay Johnson injury?
No, I'm not as of this moment right now that we're speaking. It doesn't sound too serious. It sounds like I think Canales said today it was day to day. So Deontay Johnson's been going hard. I mean, he's been making plays every single day in training camp and going up against JC Horn and one-on-ones, and he's been showing us a lot. And I'm sure they're just taking it easy, being careful, being smart with Johnson. If he's saying that he's feeling something tight in his groin area, then they're gonna hold him out, and I think that's smart. So right now, no concern for me. Dane Jackson, he rode a cart off of practice. It didn't sound like he had to be picked up off the field and carted off the field, kind of thing, like out of a game when you're injured and it's a serious injury. So I don't know if either of them are significant and will carry over into the regular season. I hope not. But at this point, I think both of these injuries are kind of minor, and they'll both be good for week 1. I doubt we see either of them in the preseason game on Saturday, especially if Deontay Johnson is continuing to be day to day and feeling tightness in his groin. There's no reason to put him on the field. He's probably one of the players that doesn't need the reps. Out being on the same page with Bryce Young, that's important. But we all know Deontay Johnson's talent level and what he does, and that's get open and catch the ball. So I would be smart with him and not force him into the preseason game if you don't need to. So no concern right now on my behalf.
JJ?
Well, I'm not concerned with the seriousness of the injuries. I think the only concern I have is what you mentioned to intro this topic, Curtis, was that the depth on this team is just so shallow, right? So if a starter's out, like it feels like it just changes the whole, especially for the offense. It just changes what we can and can't do so drastically, that I am concerned. And that's, for any of the offensive line positions, anybody in the wide receiver room. Probably it's going to be like that for the tight end room. And we know the quarterback situation, so it's just the depth, right? Like, I don't think we are prepared for anyone to miss any significant time on the offensive side. For the defensive side, Evero seemingly is a mastermind of masking deficiencies with the scheme that he deploys. Like, him having guys that knows his scheme is so, good for us and what we're going to be able to do on defense this year. But what he can do with Jameson and what's my 27 Cook, the safety who came
Alex
in last
Cook.
year.
Yeah.
Alex Cook.
Like, these guys play like they've been in this scheme for years, and I think, I think that's why we have so many safeties. Everybody's like, why do we have so many safeties? I think so much of what Evero does with the secondary is dependent on his safeties. But so I'm not concerned with the severity of the injuries. I'm more concerned on the offensive side of the ball. But Deontay Johnson, I'm not concerned right now, but I'm concerned. And again, this isn't JJ being negative, but I believe Deontay has missed the last 2 practices where Bryce practiced, right? And so in those practices, like, I think we had 2 interceptions today, and we had 1 interception yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
One on Sunday.
Was it Sunday? I can't remember, but it was the guy from Texas A&M, I believe it is. The rookie.
Oh yeah, no. So it was, they had 1 on Sunday, 2 on Monday, and then 2 today, if I remember. Because the guy from maybe I'm counting that wrong, but I feel like the guy from Texas A&M, he had 2 by himself.
Well, he had 1 against Bryson, 1 from Jack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but 1 was on Bryce, and then Bryce do 1 to Toto today and 1 to Troy Hill. The reason I'm concerned is because when I remember Bryce looking good in practice, almost every highlight was to Deontay Johnson.
That's his guy. No doubt about it.
That's his guy. So I believe when Bryce is under duress, he automatically looks for Deontay. Wherever he's supposed to be in the route scheme, he knows to go to Deontay. And I believe, I won't say that Dave Canales is coaching him that way, but I think.
Well, Dave Canales said it. Yeah, he said our offense, like just a couple of weeks ago, our offense right now is, where's Deontay Johnson? He said that himself. So I don't want it to be me making things up. I recall him saying that too.
He said, it was on the Camp Confidential thing that they repeated. So Bryce is automatically locked in on where Deontay Johnson is, right? It's kind of like how he was with Thielen last year.
Yep.
I'm fearful that if Deontay Johnson isn't available in the regular season, that things fall apart. That's my fear. Because I don't know if we have another receiver, and this includes Adam Thielen. I don't think we have another receiver who can do what Deontay Johnson does within this offense. Xavier Legette isn't Deontay Johnson.
They don't. There is no guy on this team that separates like
there's nobody like Deontay Johnson in this offense. That's concerning to me because right now this is just a growing strain. Growings can kind of be recurring and problematic, lingering, whatever you want to call it. If Deontay Johnson isn't available, I wonder what happens to Bryce Young during the season. So that's my concern. It's the lack of depth because TMJ, Mingo, Thielen, none of them guys can do what Deontay does. And like the guy we mentioned who got waived, Devin Tompkins, probably is the guy that you can kind of like do some of that stuff with.
Yeah.
But we don't have another guy. So that's problematic for me. And so right now, I'm not concerned, again, with the severity of the injuries. I am concerned about who Bryce has shown to be with Deontay Johnson not being up. That's concerning.
Well, and with that added to that is like Legette's coming back from an injury. So tomorrow, they're literally going to roll out the same wide receivers they had last year against this team in joint practices at wide receiver because the two guys they added who was supposed to provide a boost to this wide receiver room are both either coming off injury or injured. So it's like that's what concerns me the most is if Deontay Johnson's injury lingers and, Legette has dealt with already 2 injuries different this offseason. Those guys need to be out there week 1, no matter what. Or we're looking at, a revamped offensive line and Dave Canales calling plays and running the ball down people's throats and hoping that works because you're going to get stacked up with a very similar wide receiver room that we had last year. So, there's definitely concern there. Sorry, I'm just reading some of these comments. But let's talk about the Camp Confidential. So that came out today, 30 minutes. You haven't seen it. I do appreciate the Panthers, whatever team you want to call, whoever shoots this stuff. They do a hell of a job. It's basically like Hard Knocks, Panthers edition. But just wanted to get your guys' initial observations, from Camp Confidential. I guess I'll start, and I didn't realize how vocal Damian Lewis was. He kind of led off the show with his speech. I didn't expect that. I don't know a ton about the dude. It just kind of caught me off guard off the top. I'm like, all right. This guy's got some juice to him, and I like that. That's what you need out of your guards. Those interior guys. Do I think Carolina overpaid for him? Yeah, they definitely did. But I appreciated his speech off the top. I didn't see that coming from him, and he was calling everyone out, and they need to step up, and we need to show this offensive line group can't be messed with type of mentality, and I appreciate that. We'll see if it's if they actually do it, but I appreciated his vocal leadership right off the top. But kind of just what are your guys' general reaction? I have a couple others. I don't want to. I'll let you guys talk a little bit too, but just initial observations of Camp Confidential.
JJ, you go ahead because I don't think you got to see the whole thing. So anything you took away from what you saw?
I think some of it has been already mentioned. Deontay Johnson, his importance to this offense, right? I think Dave Canales said early in the offseason process that he likes to have a wide receiver, that can command attention, because once defense starts rolling coverage over towards that receiver, then he can start, doing things off of what he's doing with that receiver. So I think Deontay Johnson, although he wasn't perceived from the outside looking in, when he was at Pittsburgh, he wasn't perceived as an X receiver. I think he's become like the de facto X, in Carolina, at least for now. He's only on a 1-year contract. People forget that. So we don't know if we're going to have him for a long time. But for this short-term plan that Dave Canales has, for his offense running through Bryce Young, Deontay Johnson is that guy. I thought that Deontay Johnson would be a good wide receiver for this offense, when the offseason started. I just didn't know if he would be available, but I think I had even posted it that we should try for him before we traded for him. So I was very happy that we went and got a separator for Bryce because everybody knew that's what he needed, coming off of last year. So just seeing him featured, in the first half of the episode, I thought was cool because they get it. They know that he's that guy. Adam Thielen, I've been a little critical of Adam Thielen's presence on the roster just because I can't really get a feel for who we are. And I have a good X/Twitter friend, Thor, who is, with the Minnesota Vikings fan base. And I remember last year when we picked up Adam Thielen, he and I were DMing about, who Thielen was at this point in his career. And he was just, he was just a little outdone with some of Adam Thielen's antics towards the end of things in Minnesota, right? A lot of people who don't follow the Minnesota Vikings don't get into all of that, but, Thielen was still trying to prove himself. You had Justin Jefferson who had come in and, taken over that top dog receiver role, something that Thielen had been for years in Minnesota. And so things didn't go the way that Thielen wanted, and, it got so contentious that they was like, hey, look, we're just going to get younger. They went and drafted Jordan Addison. Thielen became a free agent. Obviously, we know that Thielen preferred Kansas City. We knew that last year. He has repeated it at some golf tournament this year. To me, that signals a man who, at 34 years old, is looking for an opportunity to win. People don't realize this, but when Thielen joined the Carolina Panthers last year, he didn't think he was going to join a bad team. He was joining Frank Wright, his all-star staff, the first overall draft pick. He thought he was going to come to Carolina and compete. He even said it. I think he was on some
Pat McAfee. He was on Pat McAfee. Yeah.
Pat McAfee. He said that, hey, look, I think we can compete. I think he even mentioned Super Bowl or something. I don't know. But part of the reason that I'm the way that I'm about Adam Thielen because I can't get that out of my mind. I know he wants to compete. I know he wants to win. He doesn't. Did
Camp Confidential change your mind a little bit?
Thielen's a good guy. I know that. You know what I'm saying? I won't speak on his family members and nothing like that because that don't matter. Right? Thielen's Thielen's a dog. I do believe that. I do.
Yeah.
What I don't like, and you all know this very well, I don't like having a non-threatening receiver on the field because I think with Adam Thielen at this point in his career, he definitely doesn't have afterburners right now. He's great with good separations. He's great with the nuances of the game. I call Adam Thielen like a skinny tight end. Like he's like a skinny Travis Kelce because of his feel for where to get open in zones, how to beat, the coverages that people play against him. But I only think he can do that if he's like in the slot or not with the top corner on him, right? And
but don't you think, I'm going to come to his defense a little bit, don't you think every team needs a guy who has got pretty good hands and can find soft spots in the zone and just get open, even if he ain't the fastest guy in the world? I feel like you need one of those guys on your offense.
I'm old enough to remember a guy named Tom Waddle. I don't know who remembers Tom Waddle. Hopefully,
that's over my head.
He was like a third down possession guy for the Bears, I believe. Right back in the day, you can YouTube him or Wikipedia him or whatever. You can find some history. I don't think Waddle was his name. But Thielen is better than Waddle. But I think if I'm just going to speak for Thielen being on this team because that's the most likely scenario, right? If we're going to use Adam Thielen, he would be a guy that I would bring in for third downs. He'd be a guy that I would use in the red zone, right? Where he comes in and he has like real purpose. I think if I'm a cornerback against Adam Thielen, I know that Adam Thielen isn't trying to take me over the top, right? So whatever I'm doing defensively,
but I mean, I get that, JJ. We all agree on that. Like the guy isn't the fastest in the world. There, you go to the practices, he's a step behind everyone. There's no doubt about that. What I'm saying is, they all knew he was going to Thielen last year. The guy still put up 1,000 yards. So like there was no doubt about it. They knew this was Bryce's guy last year, and I think Buck made a good point in the comments. I think Thielen doesn't. He's a guy, but he doesn't need to be the guy. And I think Diontae Johnson is the guy, but I think he adds value as being that type where, he is going to find those soft spots and he's going to catch the ball. We've seen it numerous times in camp where he's not dropping passes when they come his way. No matter how contested it is, he comes down with it. So I think there's some value in that. And there's consistency with him and Bryce and, what they did last season. So I don't know.
No. And so all I'm saying is, to all the people who just follow my posts exclusively, if you're listening tonight, he warned me a little bit tonight, in his cameo, just because I never not liked Adam Thielen. Let me get that right, for anybody. And I thought adding him last year to the team, I thought would be more competitive, made more sense than trying to get younger, faster. And I QB school messed me up. What's my man's name? JT O'Sullivan.
Yeah. Man, oh yeah, he hated 19.
It was so rough watching like him break down Bryce Tate last year and him go at 19 and him highlight how 19 is so slow getting to where he needed to be in some of those routes. And I was like, man, like maybe we just get faster all across the board, on this team and be threatening. But you guys are, I can stand down on the Thielen situation. I mean, especially with Diontae Johnson being quasi banged up right now. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. So who am I to not want Adam Thielen?
What did you think of? Did you get to the point in the Camp Confidential where him and Diontae Johnson spoke to the team? Did you get to that
both,
point?
But I saw them talking to each other. Where
okay, because he spoke. It was the point where he was like to Diontae. Deontay's like, "Man, we need to step it up on offense." And then Thielen's like, "Yeah, I'm going to talk. We're going to talk to the team after practice." And then they addressed the team after. And I wrote that down because I didn't expect that out of Thielen or Diontae Johnson. They both spoke. I think Thielen talked to the entire offense, and then Diontae Johnson talked to the entire wide receiver group. And like, we need urgency here. We need to be better. We need to own. We need to own the practice and set an example offensively. And both those, and I love that from both of them. But I thought that's kind of where you were going with it. But Diontae Johnson's been a big surprise leadership wise. Like all the shit you heard in Pittsburgh, like totally different dude from what you heard. Like I feel like Diontae, from what they've been saying, it seems like a totally changed man when he came to Carolina. Which is awesome. Bryson, I want you to jump in because you haven't. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was gonna say, that was one of my takeaways was that meeting that Thielen had with the offense. Talk about, they set the tone. They're supposed to be one of the most talented groups on this team in the wide receiver room, and they have to go out on the field and show that and play with that urgency, and they weren't. And Thielen called him out and was like, I'm not trying to bark at you guys, but this is what I'm seeing. If we want to be a team that's going to win on Sundays, we got to make it matter now. Like this is what counts. And I appreciated that leadership. I thought it was really cool to see the relationship between Diontae Johnson and JC Horn. They really highlighted that majorly in this Camp Confidential. They seem like best friends. They have great competition going on between each other. Iron sharpens iron. You saw it on the wall. I think in the weight room, and then you go out there and you see Diontae Johnson and JC Horn going back and forth. They're both in the Pro Bowl this year, and Deontay Johnson getting his and J.C. Horn getting his, J.C. Horn putting the seatbelt on and showing TMJ how to do it right and not like so aggressive. I thought that was really cool. But I think overall, I would have liked to see like more of like like the Hard Knocks style, where you get to see kind of the things where probably like this is edited by the team. The team puts out what they want to see.
David Tepper's got his fingertips all over this damn thing.
Absolutely. So Hard Knocks, not so much. Hard Knocks, still has to abide by certain rules by the team, but I'm sure things get out on Hard Knocks that teams prefer not. And I would like to see that style a little bit more. I'm hoping to get Hard Knocks eventually, maybe. But yeah, I think overall a cool episode, and I think I'm excited to see. I believe there's going to be a couple more episodes, right? If I'm not mistaken. So it'd be cool to see the progression through the preseason and the continued interactions between the players. And I really liked the scene where they kind of showed a little bit more in depth where Jadeveon Clowney hit Chuba Hubbard, and then Ikem Ekwonu kind of stepped in and was like, "Yo, what the fuck, dude? Like, what's your problem?" And that was cool, just seeing like Ikwanu's not a good player. I think we know that, and at least he's got his teammates back on the offense. At least he's doing that. So
he sure as fuck didn't have that last year. That's probably why he stepped up, because we saw Bryce when he got his ass knocked down and his offensive line just stood there.
They act like it didn't happen. So I thought that was cool to see. I would have loved to like hear a lot more audio from that. But of course, like I said, the team puts out what they want to put out. So and then the ending, with Canales singing, I thought that was cool. Like, I feel like we haven't had a coach like him in a very long time. I mean, not ever, with like his style of coaching and being a player's coach, quote unquote, to a higher level than what we've seen in Carolina. Really like preaching togetherness, and I use preaching because I believe he's very involved in his religious activities as well. So preaching togetherness and being teammates, being good men, being like everything that is required to be successful on the field on Sunday. And it's cool to see that. And I feel like the players are buying in. If they haven't already, they're slowly doing it. And Canales is, pray to God, the coach for the future. I mean, I'm so tired of every year or two talking about, all right, who's the next coach in Carolina? And it's so frustrating. We've all been dealing with it for a long time, and I'm hopeful that Canales is the man for the job, and hopefully the head coach of the Carolina Panthers for a long time, because he's young. Hopefully he's here for a while.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what you said. I really enjoyed the relationship between Deontay and JC, and I felt like we got a pretty good snapshot of JC's personality on the field too. He was talking trash between Deontay at the Back Together Saturday that they showed, and they do really have a tight relationship, and that's good. Like, I feel like those are some two good Dan Morgan preached, we need some dogs. Those are some one dog on offense and a dog on defense. And just that camaraderie between the two, and they were working together after practice. I think Deontay wanted a little bit more work with just JC and lining up against the corner. So that was really cool to see. And, JC's, running his mouth about the route god. He's like, your route god ass and all this shit. Like, I love that. That's the shit I like to see. And you can kind of see like the culture building a little bit. Don't want to be too positive. I'm not getting there yet, but like, that was cool to see throughout the episode. And we got to talk about Dave. I mean, Three Little Birds, Bob Marley. I mean, I appreciated every bit of that. You don't see that a lot from coaches, and I'm sure maybe it happens and they just don't show it, but I appreciate them showing that, because I felt like just the team, just the culture and what they're building, you could just see that, like you said, togetherness. Like, everyone was joining in on the song. It was good. And I hope they do show some of the rookies, because I've heard some of them were awful. And I think we got a little glimpse of think it was Jatavion Sanders
Yeah.
with the Luke Holmes, beautiful, crazy. So I got to ask you guys, this is my one question. If you had to do a rookie song, what would it be? And I'll throw you to the fire on this. I'll start with JJ. If you had to sing a song in front of 90 guys, what would you be singing?
Honestly, if they would allow me to rap, it would probably be some Outkast and some Biggie Smalls.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't know which song. I know almost every Outkast song by heart. Both Andre's and Big Boy's respective verses. So, but I'm an Andre 3000 stan, and so it'd be something from the Outkast catalog, I would think. Or if I had to sing, it would be either Jodeci or something from Anthony Hamilton. So I keep it.
All right.
Charlotte. I keep that. I give that to Charlotte, Jodeci, and Anthony Hamilton.
Bryson, what about
right.
you? What are you singing?
Yeah, I'm gonna go the complete opposite end of the spectrum and go country. Probably a song that you and I both were enjoying this past weekend, Curtis. "Dirt Cheap" by Cody Johnson, or maybe my go-to karaoke, "Good Directions" by Currington. I love singing that song. Most people know it, so I'd probably go either one of those two.
Yeah, my karaoke song. It's "Long Black Train." I wouldn't do that in front of a room of 90 dudes, but I would just pick something everyone knows. "Don't Stop Believing." It'd be awful. I would try to pull off something where just to distract like what the Bears guys did. He ripped off his pants using a Speedo, the Eagle, but yeah, I don't know. I'd probably pick something popular that everyone's going to sing along to, because I know my singing ain't worth a shit. So, but let's talk about the joint practices. Let's switch gears here. That happens tomorrow. I am excited because I'm going. This will be my first joint practice I've ever been a part of. And I'm excited because I feel like this will be a pretty good test and a good measuring stick to see where this team is at. And, Bryce Young will finally go up against another team in this new system. I know it ain't preseason like JJ wants, but we're at least going to see, Bryce Young go up against another team. And I'm just excited. I'm excited. There's a ton of matchups here. JJ kind of talked about it, but I tweeted this out today. The offensive line, I think this is a big test. I remember last year they got their ass kicked in Spartanburg with that D-line, with Bryce Huff, Quinnen Williams, and some of those other guys. I think McDowell was there then too. I don't know, or Will McDonald. I think he was a rookie last year. And he was kind of coming up at that point. But this is a big test for them. I know Hassan Reddick ain't going to be out there, thank goodness. But Quinnen Williams, Jermaine Johnson, Javon Kinlaw, and Will McDonald. That is a big test for these guys, and it'll be a good measuring stick. Where is Corbett at with snapping going up against these big dudes? Where's Icky's growth at from last year? Is there any growth from his putrid season? So I feel like that's going to be a good test. Obviously, the corners with Sauce Gardner. Let's see, I don't think we're going to see Deontay Johnson out there, but if we see if Leggett plays at all tomorrow, like what has he got against some of these guys? What does Mingo? Obviously, we talked about Adam Thielen. We don't know what he's going to do with how slow he is, but yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good opportunity and kind of see, that's just offensively. Defensively, obviously Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, and I think that's going to be a good matchup with J.C. Horn, and that'll be a fun one to see. But yeah, what are you guys looking forward to with joint practices?
Yeah, I think you highlighted most of it, but I would say in particular, like you mentioned, Austin Corbett is really what I'm going to be looking at on offense. When we were there on Sunday, it was all like every other snap was low. It was, to the left, to the right. He was really struggling getting snaps out in a correct manner to Bryce Young. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with Quinn Williams lined up in front of him. So that's going to be good to see. Obviously, Bryce Young getting through progressions, especially if Deontay Johnson isn't out there. It doesn't like he's going to be. How does he look? That's going to be a really good test that we have to see to this point in this training camp. So that's going to be good. And then I'm really looking forward to, like you mentioned, Curtis, J.C. Horn versus Garrett Wilson. I think, when joint practices happen, tempers flare. I think it's a lot of high-level talent, people at the highest level of ability in a sport that is extremely hard to play. And, I think that's when tempers flare, and we saw it last year, and we'll probably see it again this year. We're going to see some back and forth for sure. Hopefully it's nothing crazy like neighbors or anything. I think I saw today a Cowboys player pushed a Rams coach after he did a one-on-one versus an offensive lineman, nothing crazy like that. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see just J.C. Horn talking shit to Garrett Wilson, or Derek Brown getting in faces of the offensive linemen and just embarrassing them. So that would be cool. I think it's important for Carolina to show they're not a team that's going to be pushed around. I think that's really important. I don't think that Dave Canales wants them to be that team. I think Dave Canales is going to be okay if this goes down, then you need to hold your ground. You need to show them that we are not a team that's going to be pushed around anymore. So I'm excited to see that and just see what Bryce Young looks like against this Jets defense. That's going to be a good one this year.
So before we go to JJ, I'm just going to shamelessly plug us. We got 580 people listening right now. We appreciate every single one of you. If you haven't already, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, Panthers on Tap. You can get our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast as well. I just wanted to plug that quickly. And some just positives a little bit too. I'm curious to see Clowney go up against Tyrone Smith. Like, that guy's both premier at their position. Get to see this defensive line, because I feel like that's a stout group for this Panthers team going up against some of these linemen, Elijah Vera Tucker, Morgan Moses, Joe Tippmann. What does this D-line got? And then how do they do against a rushing team when they rush the ball with Breece Hall? Can they stuff him? Because I feel like Carolina has gotten better on the run defense, and where do they stack up now? Because we've seen that. It's all been the talk. These guys are good at setting the edge. They can stop the run. A'Shawn Robinson. What do these guys do now that they're actually playing against? Because we haven't seen it yet. None of the starters really played in this game. So I'm excited about that. JJ, I know I'm talking too damn much. Malachi Corley too. I want to see him. That was the guy we talked about, Bryson, as a rookie for the Jets wide receiver. The Jets actually traded with Carolina to get him. So we'll see. I know Aaron Rodgers had that guy pointed out as someone he liked. So yeah, there's a lot. Sorry, JJ. Anything you're looking at that we haven't talked about, or anything you want to double up on?
No, we're good. I think the number one thing I want to see is, first, because we don't know if Bryson's going to play this weekend, I would love to see a bunch of highlights, footage, tweets from Mike K, Joe Person, y'all, saying that Bryce is dicing up this Jets defense, right? Like, I think that would make me feel some of that comfort that I'm speaking heading into the season. So I want really clean operations, pre-snap, completions, intermediate, deep, good decision-making from Bryce against Robert Saleh's defense. We know that Robert Saleh can coach defense. So I want to see how Bryce looks against this defense. And let's be real. I mean, it's a different system for Bryce, but Bryce saw these guys last year. They're the same. We're different. So he still should know some of the things that he saw from film last year, because they haven't changed anything. Saleh runs a very, I won't say vanilla defense, but they do what they do at a very high level. They don't make it complicated. So Bryce prepared for them last summer. He's seen them again this year, but he has different things at his disposal, different weapons, a better offensive line, hopefully a better scheme. He should look better this summer compared to last summer. So I want to see that, right? So that's not hate, that's objectivity, and that's hopeful. That's Bryce. This defense has looked good over the last couple of practices, creating turnovers, being disruptive. Let's see how they look against Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Let's see against other people, or they're good against what may be bad offense in Carolina. We don't know because we haven't played anybody ones versus ones yet. So I'm looking to see if our defense can continue to make plays like they've been making against our offense against the Jets. I think that will also make me very hopeful about who we are going into the season. You guys already highlighted the one-on-one matchups that we're interested in, but I'll end on this. I love the talent that Aaron Rodgers possesses. I believe that he is the best passer of the football these 40-something eyes have ever seen. And I've seen a lot, right? So props to that man for his football talents. But please, Charlotte, reporters, content creators, David Newton, don't make this next 3 days about Aaron Rodgers. It's still about us. They're at our house, I believe, right? They're in Charlotte. So
Yep.
It's about the Carolina Panthers. Don't be fanboying the fact that Aaron Rodgers is in town. Carolina Panthers are hosting the Jets. So, give him his due, but don't make the next 3 days the Aaron Rodgers show. And I would appreciate it. That's all I can know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot Braylon Allen was drafted by this team, the Wisconsin Badger. I want to see what he can do. I mean, I hope he gets stuffed by this this D line, but I'm just curious, and I'm curious to see him in this game this weekend in Charlotte because that was one guy liked at running back in the draft process when we discussed it back in April and March. So just curious, just some of those guys that we talked about. We had JJ on. We talked during our draft special and mock drafts and all this. It's cool to see some of these guys that you talked about actually out there on the field and see what they can really do. Expectations for this preseason game. We kind of talked about it a little bit. I think I know where I think all of our minds are at. Maybe not Bryson because he could care less if they play in preseason, it sounds like. But what do you want to see from this second preseason game? I know it's early. We don't know who's going to be playing. JJ, obviously, it sounds like you want Bryce Young out there. I would like that as well. I would be surprised if he does play. But what are your expectations for this next preseason game? Who do you want to see show up?
I want to see what we didn't see in week one, right? We saw the backups, we saw the second and third stringers, and we didn't like what we saw. We didn't like seeing Jack Plummer. Jake Luton, I believe is his name, came in at the very end, and we saw some life, we saw some juice. But we haven't really won in the preseason. I'm not one of those believers that you win everything. If I was playing Madden and if I didn't simulate the preseason, I'll be trying to go undefeated in the preseason, right? I believe that energy carries over into the regular season. So getting to beat 17-3 or 21-0 or whatever it was last preseason, carrying over into this season, Patriot offenses and stuff like that. Like I'm over it. So I saw the Jets play this past weekend. Guys marched right down the field and scored on them, right? Like they're not indomitable. Like the Carolina Panthers should be able to put together some drives to score on the New York Jets after practicing against them all week. Because if you remember correctly, and this is for everybody listening, but especially you, Kurt and Bryce, we practiced against them all preseason. They were on Hard Knocks last year. And Robert Saleh was talking cash trash about what they were going to went out there and dominated us. Do y'all remember that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be some punks about it this year. and let them come in and practice against us, and then go into their little, wherever they are, dominating us, and then go out and do it during the preseason game, and we just lay down and let it happen. Like, they dominated us last preseason, and they said they were going to do it, and they did it. When are we going to be like that, right? Like, when are we going to have the type of attitude that's going to go practice against them boys all week for 2 or 3 days, and you go into the locker, you go into the wherever, our meeting room, and we tell our team.
And I don't know how many it's going to be. There's only one public joint practice. I don't know if there's other ones after that that's not open to the public. I think they're only doing one joint practice, and then they might split off and do their own shit the next couple of days before the game is set. Because a lot of teams are going to either 1 or 2 days of joint practices because it's too much going on. But
I'm sorry, I broken up. I'm sorry. But we should be prepared to kick their butts on Saturday. Like, I want to go out there and compete. I would love to win. I know people say it don't matter, but I think that energy matters. I think you should feel what it feels like to win. It took us until like week 7 last year to win, right? And it was like winning the Super Bowl. Frank Wright was like about to cry. Like Bryce Young was getting pats on the back, and it was like, look, man.
Well, it helped out they beat C.J. Stroud.
I know, but it didn't matter who we beat. Like, we should know what it feels like to win. This unit, we don't need to wait until week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to get a first win. Like, win status.
Amen, dude. Win. I get it, man.
Just win. And that's what I'm ready for. People think that I'm just tripping and I'm negative. Like, no, I'm tired.
The Lions did go 4-0 in preseason and then lost every game in the regular season.
But when is the last time? Like, they try to win them all. They try to win them all. Like, they matter. And
I get it. I get the mentality of it.
Winning should matter. It mattered to the Jets when they came to Wofford last year. And they went out there and kicked our butts because it didn't matter to us, right? And when it doesn't matter in August, you think people just flip a switch in September?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my mentality. But I will say this, and it shouldn't matter, but y'all know this. I don't hide it. I grew up following a winning franchise, right, before the Carolina Panthers. I always expected to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this BS that this fan base.
We don't even need to mention them by name.
No. But if you know any Steelers fans, if you know Cowboys fans,
I hear it, dude. I grew up a Packers fan. I hear it. I mean, it was win after win after. I get it. I understand
those dudes, and the way that it's not the stuff that we talk about on Twitter every day. Everything that they do is about excellence, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Panthers. What we do, the organization, the owner, the new owner, I think Jerry Richardson actually believed this stuff. Tepper, although he came from the Steelers, the way he's approaching it, who he hires, the operations, the facilities, all that stuff permeates the fan base and the mind think about what's acceptable. The only thing that's acceptable in football is excellence. Like, this stuff is hard, bro. Like, to get out there and bang your body against somebody else's body at 23 miles per hour, like 50, 60 times a game, and to not expect to win, like, even like, I just put it like this, even for my son, right? He's 15, about to be 16, going to varsity football. The work that he has to put in to be prepared to play on Friday nights. You can't just go do all that work and then show up to the game and not expect to beat the guy in front of you. Every single time, does not matter who they are, what's their names, what's that logo, what stadium you're in, how many Lombardis they got. The Carolina Panthers need to believe, like, every time we step on the field, we're better than those dudes across from us. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't have to suck, and we don't have to have Cam Newton and Luke Kuechly to not are good enough to win. They have to believe that they're good enough to win. Like, everybody was good and great wherever they came from. Bryce Young was the best quarterback in college football for 2 straight years, right? And the guys he had around the Ike Ekwonu was the best tackle available in the draft, right? You have all these guys that's been the best somewhere at some point in time. JC was top 2 corner in his draft. You have to put these players in position to win, but you have to put it in their minds that they're supposed to win, right? And that's what Carolina has a problem with instilling from the top down, right? It's the seriousness of winning, the expectation of excellence. I haven't felt it. I haven't felt it since the Alpha Dogs left the building, right?
Yep.
No coach, Rule, Wright, anybody else in between has pulled it back in. And I think Steve Wilkes gave us a glimpse of it because he remembered, right? Yep. And so we in Carolina have forgotten what it feels like to expect success. And I want that to start Saturday. And the crazy part is I won't be able to watch the game on Saturday. It's my wife's birthday. I got tickets to the Usher concert here in Atlanta. And so I'm going to miss it. So Bryce Young probably will play because I can't see the game. I won't be able to watch it. I'll be at a concert. But I don't care. As long as I can get done with the concert, check my Twitter right after I'm done and say Carolina Panthers won, I'm going to be ecstatic because I want the expectation to be winning. We went and got who we believe to be the best quarterback in the draft. Don't matter where C.J. Stroud went. Don't matter where Anthony Richardson, where Will Levis, all them guys went. They had enough reason to believe that Bryce was the guy. Now, have the success that you envision him having when you drafted him. Like, it's not just getting one guy. It's not just getting 2 offensive linemen. You have to do everything purposefully and everything intentionally around excellence. And until we do that, man, until we start thinking that and breathing that and actually like representing that, being tough, like, and this is the last thing I'm gonna say about them. I'm end it. That's the only reason I wanted somebody like Jim Harbaugh. It's the only reason I wanted Mike Vrabel. It's the only reason I wanted those guys who had been, because Vrabel saw that in New England. And I thought at times he showed that he could be that in Tennessee. We know who Jim Harbaugh is, right? And so when Dave Tepper went the way that he went, and like for all the reasons you all mentioned, I love Dave Canales' energy. I think he's probably the most positive coach I've ever experienced. Like, if he wasn't the coach, he should be the team chaplain. But he's a coach, right? And so if you passed over all that winning experience for that guy, for whatever reasons you believe in, for him to be our guy, I hope with everything in me that he is that guy. But if you're going to be the guy, Dave Canales, you have to establish an expectation of excellence. There is no great coach that you've ever studied, that currently exists, that don't have an expectation of excellence. All the greats have that. So it can't just be about, the cup is half full and, everything is great. Bryce, good interceptions today, guy. At least you're trying. Excellence. That's what Carolina needs. Excellence or nothing.
And we'll leave it there. Let's go to Bryson now. We'll cap it there. Bryson, expectations for the week 2 preseason.
Yeah, I think my first expectation is JJ gets on a flight to Charlotte and he's speaking to the team before they go out because his expectation speech got me ready to run through a wall and go out there and run a couple of routes and get absolutely destroyed. But no, I think, in my opinion, I believe practice tomorrow is the litmus test for if Bryce Young's going to play on Saturday. If this offensive line goes out there and shows that they can be competent. I mean, that's all I'm asking is competency at the highest level possible to play this game. I think if they go out there and show competency, and Bryce Young is able to be protected for the most part, and Bryce Young looks decent in these practices, I think they play him on Saturday, and I think he gets a couple drives at least. If we go out there Thursday, and I am going to go, Curtis, I've decided throughout our conversation tonight, I'm meeting you there.
We got you fired up.
I'll be leaving Raleigh at 5 a.m. To head that way. But if Bryce Young goes out tomorrow and the offensive line looks bad, the snaps are low, the offense is struggling, I don't think they play him on Saturday. I really don't, because I don't think that Dave Canales is willing to risk Bryce Young's health or Bryce Young's mental health in regards to having confidence in a preseason game that doesn't matter. So I think Thursdays we'll find out. And I think, unfortunately, we're not at the point of expecting excellence like JJ wants. I think we're at the point right now of hoping for competency, and that's what I'm hoping for. And unfortunately, being a Carolina Panthers fan, that's what it's brought me down to. We are not the Green Bay Packers or the Cowboys, or it's sad that the Jets are coming to town, the New York Jets, and we're like, why can't we be like the New York Jets? This is a team that has struggled since the beginning of time, since the beginning of football, to win football games, and now all of a sudden we're hoping we're like them. That's sad. That really is sad, and unfortunately, that's where we're at. But I think the biggest thing I want to see is them not get pushed around, them not take this shit talking from Saleh about we're going to go out there and kick their asses and just lay down. I don't want to see that. I want to see them fight back. I want to see them hold their ground, protect the bank that became popular a couple years ago. Although they're not going to be in the bank, they're going to be beside of it, but protect the yard beside of the bank. Like, this is your field, and show them that. You're not going to come out here and push me around and talk shit and have your way. That's not happen today. I'm going to get mine against you, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it better be. So that's what I'm hoping for. I think Bryce Young does play. I think that they do see enough, hopefully, that he leads a couple drives in on Saturday. I think if I had to bet, I think I'm opposite of you, Curtis. I would bet that he does play, especially with all the flack that Canales caught from week one, him not playing one. I think that's probably got a little pressure on him to get Bryce out there for week two. But we'll see, man. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting practice.
Yeah, I'm with a lot of what you guys said. I want to see improvement from last year. I mean, watching that Hard Knocks where Saleh's making jokes about this team, and then they kicked our ass, and then we didn't even practice. And excuse me, the next day when it rained out, and I think the Jets went out and practiced by themselves out in Spartanburg, and Carolina didn't. That should have told us right there. That was the foreshadowing of our season right there. So yeah, I want to see improvement. I hope, Bryce Young, I know he's not very loud in the locker room, but I hope, he can, kind of show these guys what they had last year. And, we need to come out and show these guys, Adam Thielen's, Deontay Johnson, talking these guys up. Hey, we need to come out and show these guys that we're not here to just get pushed around here in Charlotte. And then the Clownies of the world. I hope he's a vocal leader. And I know Clowney ain't going to take shit like that. He ain't. I mean, the guy's been all over the field this training camp, and he's not going to let these guys, JC Horns too, like they need to set a tone early. And I think this is a big test. I know everyone's been, freaking out about a couple of the picks here and there from Bryce, but like tomorrow we'll set the tone and we'll see really a good gauge on where this offense is without probably their top target in Deontay Johnson. It sounds like he's probably not going to practice. So what do they do with him not out there? And they better not get pushed around early. I mean, they got to set the tone for this practice. And then in preseason, just overall expectation, I think a couple more starters are going to play it. I don't see Bryce Young playing. I just think they're going to value the joint practices, and that's what they're going to take to the bank. And, maybe he sees some time versus Buffalo. But I want to see some more guys play. I don't want to see Jack Plummer out there for 4 quarters or 3.5 or whatever it was. Like Jake Luton, that guy provided a spark for this team in the 4th quarter last week, which is pathetic.
Yeah.
So Bryce needs to play at some point in preseason. I don't think it's going to be this weekend, but they need to come out firing tomorrow, and they better not look with what, we've heard from practice the last couple of days, what I've seen from 7-on-7 a couple times back together Saturday. There was a couple times where I looked at Ricky on when, the offense was out there, the number ones, and I'm like, we're not hitting guys on 7-on-7, no pressure like that. You need to find someone. Like there needs to be plays here. So it better happen tomorrow, because the alarms will go off if they're struggling. So, and we need to see Damian Lewis out there. I don't know. I know this guy has had some personal matters, but they paid him a pretty penny. He needs to be out there playing with these guys, and they need all the interior help they can get, because they got a guy coming in at center who has not played the position. I don't care what anyone says. Bryson, you've been all over it at the practices, counting the snaps. There's been some bad ones. So, this is going to be a big test, and we're going to, get to see it. And I'm excited. I'm excited for joint practices. We'll both be there in the VIP section. JJ, you should have traveled up this way to come to the practice. Call out sick tomorrow. Hopefully no one at your work's watching this stream and you can come and watch it with us. But JJ's like, fuck that. If Bryce ain't playing in preseason, I ain't coming.
Look, hey, I said this earlier. Well, I said it today, and I said it yesterday, and I said it at some point last week. Man, I can't imagine driving all the way to Charlotte, right? That's about 3.5. Yeah, I guess about 3.5, 4. Maybe with traffic in the morning. But I can't imagine driving all that way to see some of the things that's been reported. Like, I would be so disappointed. You know what I'm saying? And I would have driven to Wofford, which is about an hour shorter, because I could have spent time with family in South Carolina and Spartanburg, but Dave Tepper took that from me. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good time. I do appreciate the offer. Obviously, I wish I could have met you guys. But I have a question for you, and then I'll be done with anything that I could potentially ask. But I want to ask both of you about the whole preseason playing time and all that stuff. Do you think? Because I know Dave Canales has gotten credit for being kind of outside the box and doing things differently.
I know where you're going with this.
Do you guys believe Dave Tepper has influenced those decisions?
Would not surprise me at all. Would not surprise me one bit. Nope. I dislike Tepper. I dislike Tepper very much, and I would not be shocked at all if that guy's. And I really hope that isn't the case, because that means his meddling is not over at all. And I don't think it is over. I think he's going to have those weekly meetings with Canales, like Frank Reich dreaded last year that he talked about publicly. But that would not shock me one bit at all.
And the reason I ask this is because I know, Dalton was down. The offensive line was healthy last week, just to be clear. So it shouldn't have been because you were scared to put Bryce behind the offensive line you paid for. They were healthy enough to play, I think. Maybe didn't get enough practices in. But either way, I've been quietly, not tweeting it, thinking if Tepper is influencing that decision. And the reason, if you follow me here, Canales grew up in Seattle. That's all he watched. Pete Carroll's whole mantra is compete, 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 right? Like competition. Like no matter where you was drafted, who you are, the best players will play, right?
Did the QB start in preseason for Carolina?
I don't know. I can't remember. But I know last year when Baker and what's my man's
That was
name?
different, though. I don't want to even compare that because there was competition.
We have limited, information about who Dave Canales is. I can't remember. I didn't watch in Seattle. That's well noted. In Tampa last year, I know Baker was supposed to be in a competition last year. I imagine they always played, right? I don't think they named any starter before the preseason. We know Bryce is the starter.
Yeah, I think Baker played 2 games preseason games last year.
Yeah. We know Bryce is the starter, so this is not about him competing for this job. I just think it's always about competition and always about getting opportunities. So it just made me wonder. I haven't even thought about Dave Canales all that much in terms of his decision to play or not play. Whenever I saw that decision made, my mind automatically went to Tepper. I just didn't post it. So It was something that I thought about. You guys gave me a forum to ask you. So I asked you the question. I appreciate the honest answer because I do believe that I do think he had input on it. And I think his input is always influential.
Oh yeah, would not put it past them.
And I agree with Curtis. I wouldn't be surprised one bit. Let's just think about the business aspect. If Bryce Young goes down in a preseason game, who's coming to Carolina Panthers games? I'm sure we all know David Tepper's a businessman. So if your quarterback's healthy week 1, your starting quarterback that's going to draw people in to watch, hopefully, then why risk health in a game that doesn't matter? But I found this quote. It's interesting from Pete Carroll talking about quarterbacks playing in preseason games. He was asked if Geno Smith was going to play in a preseason game. And this was the last preseason game of the preseason, I believe, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. He said he's going to play a lot. Yeah, Carroll told reporters, "I want to get as much under his as we can, getting him ready." So that's interesting. If he's maintaining the Pete Carroll, he's the guy. He's my mentor. And Pete Carroll saying, "Yeah, I mean he's going to get reps. We want to be ready for week 1." So that really does kind of make me think about your point, JJ. And
God, JJ, I'll tell you what. I wish you would have tweeted that, and you probably should tweet it because I hope one of the beat reporters picks it up and asks him if Bryce doesn't play this next week, because I know someone. I know David Newton would ask it, or Joe Person would for sure. Even Mike K. I mean, though, like it's an interesting perspective, and I'd take it a step further from what Bryson said. Not even the business decision. He saw what happened last year with Frank Reich's debacle, and this is a vanilla offense. You'll see the floodgates open up once the season starts, and then it never happened. And maybe hide the deficiencies of where Bryce is at with this offense. I mean, I could see from what David Tepper has done in these last 7 years, I wouldn't put a damn thing past them. So
look, I'm just tossing it out of you. I'm not going to tweet it, post it, but if you feel it's appropriate at any given time, feel free to reach out to your friends in Charlotte and ask if they're willing to ask the question. I don't have to do it. Every time I say something, it's always negative now, so y'all can have it.
Well, JJ, we appreciate you coming on. If you guys do not follow him on Twitter, he's a great follow. He's at Panthers Culture. Has built a pretty good brand with what he started several years ago. So we appreciate you. We've had you on a ton. We thank you for the time. We'll probably have you back in a couple of weeks right before the season. Hopefully at that point, Bryce Young has played some snaps in preseason and we could talk about it. But we appreciate you. We're 2+ hours here, and most listeners we've had yet. So 600 plus, 650 plus, whatever it's at. We appreciate it. And it's been fun. And hopefully the Panthers show up tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll talk to y'all later. Keep pounding.